Welcome to Machine Tool Maniacs, the podcast where machining, fabrication, entrepreneurship, and bringing ideas to life collide. Around here, every story is a success story. I'm Matt, a second-generation manufacturer who's been in the shop since I was in diapers, learning the tools, the trade, and the people behind it all. Nearly everything in our daily lives is passed through a CNC machine. And we're here to spotlight the makers turning raw material into reality. Whether you're dreaming big or building bigger, this is your inside track to making it happen. Welcome back. Today I'm sitting down with Cody Ruud, founder of Dynamic Machine out of Logan, Utah. Cody started his machining journey like many of us, working for other shops and building up his skill set. Eventually, he decided to strike out on his own. What's cool about Cody's story is that he literally started his backyard garage shop, overcoming crazy challenges like figuring out power requirements just to keep machines running. We're going to talk about the grind of starting a shop from scratch, the pros and cons of buying used equipment, how Cody has built some killer branding and marketing for his company, and what the future holds for Dynamic Machine. So whether you're a machinist dreaming of starting your own shop or a shop owner looking to level up, you're going to love this conversation. So let's dive in. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Cody.
Yeah, I'm Cody with Dynamic Machine and Engineering. I started out in 2023, like you said in the intro. I started looking for places to rent and things to, start machining and get my foot in the door with anybody that I could, and just all the challenges that present itself doing that stuff it's a challenge for sure. And anybody that wants to do their own thing or start their own machine shop, it's great to do, and it's great to have all your ducks in a row at the same time to go out and do this thing. I started looking for a place to rent and start my machine shop in, and that's a challenge in itself, and doing all the homework that you need to do to even start a machine shop and having the confidence to do it is another big key in starting it.
So were you looking for a place to rent before you built your building in your backyard?
Yeah, so that was kind of the first things that I did was, okay, what's my niche? What am I going to try and machine? Am I going to be a job shop? Am I going to be, into production? Am I going to start machining some of the stuff that I have ideas of doing or want to do? And you kind of have to decide, what's going to pay your bills? What makes the most sense? And what are you going to do to, take that first step? And obviously the first step is maybe finding some clientele or finding a place to start machining out of.
Mm-hmm. So what led to you deciding to build your shop in your backyard versus just renting a place?
Well, when I first was looking to start, I looked around for some places to rent, and a lot of the people that you go to rent from, they want you to sign a 2 or 3 year lease, and the lease goes up every year, they have overhead costs is what they were telling me. And I found a few places to rent, and that was a big hurdle for me to find somewhere to go. And it took me, I found a place that it was going to work, and then it wasn't going to work. Didn't have enough power. It's kind of a farther drive or yada, yada. And it ultimately, I was going to just be basically giving somebody, between $2,000 and $4,000 a month just to rent a place. And, it was easier for me to kind of sit back and think, well, if I was able to build a shop in my backyard, then could I take that money and essentially invest it into my property, right? So my house value goes up. I have a shop, there's selling points of selling the house now. And I can take that money that I would give somebody else, the $2,000 to $4,000 a month, and I can put that into paying off my building. And I was able to, secure a loan that I was able to put the machines into and my building into, and just have one payment. So that was a huge help to me. I mean, it was easier just to sum it all up in one and just make that monthly payment. And, and the payment would have been as much as just rent for me. And it was kind of just a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's go back a little further. So tell us the story of how you got started in machining. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, that's great. So probably when I was like 13 or so, my dad, he's a general contractor, and I went into a machine shop with him. We were getting an engine rebuilt, and I went into this guy's machine shop, and he kind of rebuilt engines on the side. And we went into his shop and was checking it out. And I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. You can take this block of aluminum or whatever material it may be and pull this part out of it, and he kind of gave us a tour of his shop and the things that they were doing. And it really intrigued me. And I was like, well, this was something I could maybe see myself doing, and probably around that time, you're probably thinking about what you might want to do for, a life, a lifestyle and stuff. So I was looking into it, and there was a summer school class down at Bridgerland Applied Technology College. And I was able to get on the summer school when I turned 16 in the machine shop. And right when I turned on the manual lathe and made a part, it was just turning a bar, down to size. I was hooked. I was like, whoa, this is amazing what you can do with this machine, and I kind of just took off from there and did all the summer classes and went through the high school program and was fortunate enough to land a job in a really great machine shop that helped me build great skills. And I was put around people that, you know, have really good skills and just kind of absorbed all the knowledge that they would share with you. And also you have to kind of be willing to think outside of the box. You can't ask them all the questions, and part of it is they want to see you, figure it out.
Yeah, that is a big thing that separates the ones who can really do well in this industry. If you have systems for problem solving, it really elevates you, and the ones who prove that they can solve problems on their own through various means are definitely the ones that get ahead. So
Oh,
that's huge.
yeah, and it's just like I said, if you can, I was fortunate enough to get around a bunch of great machinists, and I started working nights at this shop, and I was running the lathe a little bit, and then the owner come up to me, probably 3 or 4 months in, said, "What do you like? What do you really want to do?" And the mills always intrigued me, and I was on the mill side of it when I was going to Bridgerland. I was doing the manual mill and doing some easy track and easy path type of work, and it was just crazy what you could do. With you could just tell the machine, "Hey, let's go here and make this cut," and it would just go and do it, and with simple programming or hand editing or any of that. And it just really intrigued me. And once I got the opportunity to move to the mills, I really honed in on those skills because it was really more of like something I really like to do with the mills versus the lathes. Lathes have their place, but I really was like a mill guy. And when I got
Yeah.
that opportunity to move to the mills, and I worked nights and just, did the tedious of, cleaning the shop, putting coolant in the machines, loading parts, a lot of repetitive stuff. It was a production shop, and I was able to learn how to load and be efficient and watch the machines and check parts. And it gives you a lot of fundamental, like foundation stuff to learn these skills. And, towards the summer, I graduated high school and everything, and I got offered a day job. And I took that opportunity and just was like, yeah, I'll work days, because all the journeyman machinists, most people know, they're on day shift, And so when you transition from day to night shift, you get maybe an hour with that guy, and you try and ask him as much questions that you can or you can think of. I would take notes and say, hey, I need to ask this and this and this tomorrow, and kind of figure out, hey, this is what happened throughout the night. What do I do to fix it in the future? Or how did you fix it when you got here in the morning if there was a problem with the machine, you know? So going to day shift in a short amount of time, I was able to absorb a lot more information because I was with those guys, 8 or 10 hours of the day.
Yeah. How long did you do 5-axis stuff at the shop you were at before starting your own shop? Because I know you have 5-axis in your shop now. So did you
Yeah.
learn those skills in that shop as well?
Yeah, I only worked in one machine shop. I worked at that company. It was a great place to work, great place to learn. And there were so many people that came in and out with an abundance of knowledge. And I worked there for 16 years and just kind of moved up through the ranks. And towards the end of uh, working there and going out to start my own thing, I was uh, given the opportunity to learn 5-axis with another guy. And we just kind of figured it out and went from there. And I mean, 5-axis is huge. And it's not even truly 5-axis, right? It's just 3+2 most of the time, but it eliminates tons of uh, chance for mistakes, or you can hold parts a lot differently, and it just opens up the game of machining 5-axis. I mean, it's just the new wave of doing things.
Absolutely. I love it. Just, I worked in medical device for a long time, and we would, and even for us, we only had rotary tables that were 3+2. So we didn't even have simultaneous 5-axis in that when I was in that role. But just the ability to go down and index and get to all 5 sides of the part, and oftentimes
Oh
we'd
yeah,
use a key cutter, and just cut the part off when we were done. It was
yeah,
a game changer.
I've done that. Yeah, I've done that many times, and like simultaneous 5-axis, it's cool, it's fun to watch, but you just get that part that rolls across your quote desk, and you're like, how could I do this? And you look at it. I look at a lot of parts that come in and go, man, if I didn't have this fifth, I would be doing this in 5 or 6 operations. With just this, it's got this one angle and a hole on it. And you can just rotate to 30 degrees and pop that hole in it and cut the chamfer, and it's done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. So were there any other skills that you feel you developed while working in another shop prior to starting your own shop, as far as,
Yeah.
say, quoting or ERP systems, inspection stuff? What other skills did you develop prior to setting out on your own?
So yeah, that shop that I worked at, they had great measuring equipment and just tons of places you could move up in. And I was put in positions to, manage and and help do quoting. I didn't do quoting all the way through, but it did help me transition to starting my own shop, kind of figuring out what type of time and tooling we were going to need and material sizes and stuff like that. So that it was really helpful to learn all those skills at that other shop. And then there was just various amounts of measuring equipment like those linear height gauges, the Tremos gauges, and manual CMM, and just all the basic measuring equipment. And you learn a lot of that stuff, like how to operate basic measuring equipment through like an applied technology college. I learned an abundance of knowledge from doing that, and I highly recommend maybe going and doing like the introduction to basic machining. You don't have to go through the whole course, but at least learn what it's about and see if it's something you can find interesting to you. I mean, there's a lot of people I've seen back when I worked and had the opportunity to, interview and hire people, that you could tell that they'd never even stepped foot in a shop and they don't know what it is. And you need bodies in there to, load machines and keep stuff running. And you end up going backwards with that person because they end up costing you money and they don't really understand what they're doing. And eventually they just kind of fade away and they quit, and it's just kind of wasted time, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So what for you was that turning point where you said, "Okay, I am ready to start my own business," cuz That's a major hang up for a lot of people, including myself.
Pretty big leap for sure. I mean, the turning point for me is, you know, you get to a point, I guess, I don't know, I can't speak for other machinists or people that start their own shops, but you get to a point where you're kind of like deadlocked, right? Like, I guess you just are like, well, you know, I kind of know this shop or the shop that I'm in that really well, and I know how this operates. Either I need to go somewhere else and have a new challenge, or, you know, start my own shop. And that's kind of like where I was hung up. You know, I was just like, I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at. You know, making, you know, 9 to 5, making a paycheck. It's great. But I just always felt like there was just more. And, you know, ever since I was younger going into that other shop, I was just like, man, this is so cool. I would love to have my own stuff. And every machinist or anybody that's in this industry is like, dude, it'd be sweet to have a hobby machine, you know, like a Haas mini mill, or, you know, even like a CNC like wood router or something in their garage, just so they can do projects on the weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's doing that stuff, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm thinking about putting a little Haas Mini in my garage as well. So
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
The wheels are turning. We'll just put it that way.
Right. And that's kind of, you know, the last maybe 2 years or so that I worked at that shop, I was like, do I do this, you know, or do I stick it out here? And I got to the point where I was just like, it's either now or never, you know, and like no risk, no reward, you know. And I was like, well, I'm thinking about going to another shop anyways. Why don't I just start my own, you know, or, you know, let's see what that would look like. And there was an abundance of challenges there, you know, with the rent, and then finally deciding to build a shop in my backyard to invest in myself and not throw money away, essentially. But then you come with the challenges of where's your power? How are you going to get the power? So that was another challenge. I had to get uh, up my service to my house and buy a phase converter. And I bought a digital phase converter and was able to hook that up to a 220 amp service that was dedicated to my shop. So I have one dedicated to my house and one dedicated to my shop, and was able to just run my machines off of that. And it's a big enough phase converter. I figured I would grow that it would run 3 machines, and that's where we're at today. And the next challenge is finding a place to rent or building another building, you know.
Got it. Yep. So you're out. You're bursting at the seams in that place, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I didn't expect to grow as fast as I did, and it's just been great. You know, I really appreciate everybody that's given me work and let me live the dream. You know, I mean, and it's just the American dream. It's alive and well. You know, if you want to do it, go and do it.
Your shop is beautiful, man. It is a dream shop. I mean, it's clean, it's bright. You go in there, the way you set it up, it's just a good environment.
Right. Yeah, and that's another thing is, you know, if you're gonna do it, you can put it in your garage, but I'm telling you, if you have like, you know, 5,000 square foot or 1,000 square foot 2-car garage, that fills up quick. By the time you get your machine in there, some tooling, get a saw if you need one, you know, you'll fill that up real fast. My shop's only 1,500 square feet and it's full.
Yeah. So what was your first piece of equipment and where did you get it from?
So I had just found it on the marketplace. There's KSL, if people are familiar with that. And it was in the classifieds, and there was a guy that had a medical shop that he had developed did some medical devices on. So the machines had really low hours, and I went to look at one. It was a 2008 VF5, and it had a trunnion fifth on it. And I figured, you know, I could build small parts on a big machine. Didn't want to limit myself, and he had a VF2 sitting next to it. And I said, so what are you doing with this one? He was like, well, I'm thinking of selling this too. And so we kind of worked out a deal, and I was able to buy the VF5 with the trunnion, and the VF2 also had a trunnion on it.
Wow.
It's a 2016, and I was able to work out the deal with the dude, and it came here. So,
Well, those things are both in I didn't even realize your one machine. You said it's a 2006?
2008. Yeah, I fit shined them, and they didn't have very many hours. I mean, the '08 it had around like 2,500 hours, and then the 2016 only had like 1,800 hours when I bought it.
Yeah,
Like he developed this thing, and he ran a little bit of production on it, maybe a couple hundred pieces, and then he sold it to another company, overseas, and basically they just sat in his little warehouse he had, and I went and test drove them, like fired up the spindles and did a few, jogged them around, and he said he had never had really any problems with them. So we come to a deal and brought him up here.
that's incredible. But yeah, both those machines are extremely clean. They almost look new.
Oh yeah, I couldn't believe it, and I just told him what I was kind of trying to do, and he worked with me. He's a pretty understanding dude. I really appreciated him, and those deals don't come along very often, but they do come along, and I ended up this spring being able to buy a Morisiki lathe, and it's a 2007. It's an older machine, but it came out of a medical shop again, and it only had about 2,500 hours on it, and it has live tooling, Y-axis sub spindle. It's a beautiful machine. You can tell it hasn't been ran hard. And buying used equipment does have its pros and cons, and some people shy away from it. But I figure, why go 300,000 on one machine where you could spend half that and get one or two really nice machines that are more than likely tooled up. This Mori came pretty much tooled up. We haven't really bought a lot for it other than, the simple like boring bars and grooving stuff and some end mill stuff for it. But other than that, it pretty much came set up, ready to go, and they just had to get rid of them because they needed to move some stuff around to be able to get some newer equipment in there for like tax reasons, I guess, is what they told me. So
That's we were talking briefly yesterday, and it's probably worth bringing up on this episode, but that is a benefit often of buying equipment used is sometimes you just get caught up in the price. You might look at something that's brand new and say, well, that's only $100,000, but it's all the little sneaky cost, right? Like the cost of the tooling and the cost of a chip conveyor and the cost of chucks if you have to buy chucks. So sometimes when you buy a piece of used equipment and you vet it out, because that's extremely important, if you need to find somebody like Will here locally that can go and inspect that equipment for you and just give you a bill of health on it. But if you vet it out and you find a good deal and you're patient, you can really get not only a machine, but also all those little ancillary items that end up nickeling, diming you to death.
Right. And that is a big risk, like my 2008, it was just running along one day, and then the carousel motor went out and it just died. Like it was just fine, died, and it was a couple $1,000s to fix. And, that is, like you said, you got to run that risk buying used equipment. But if you go and you can inspect it or have a third party inspector, like, like Will Mund, and he can say, oh yeah, this is great, or if the industry well enough, I've been in it 15, 16 years at the time I was going to start my shop. And I've been around, older and brand new equipment, and you kind of figure out, hey, this is what you need to look for on this type of equipment, And I bought equipment that was familiar to me, right? Like I bought equipment that I've ran before. So I went with a Haas, and I ran Akumas, and I had a little bit of knowledge on some Moris, but not a lot. So the Mori we kind of learned, but it was super easy. It's super easy to navigate, So, I mean, kind of pick and choose, if you're going to start a machine shop, probably pick something that you are familiar with so that you can set it up. And, if there is a problem that comes along, like I had an encoder belt go out on it. And I was able to self-diagnose that and just fix it myself, order the parts, and have them here the next day and get back up and going. So that's a big plus too if you're going to buy a used equipment. Kind of know the equipment. Don't just go buy something that you've never ran.
Yeah. Well, especially when it comes to if you're making that leap, maybe if you're trying to slowly step into it and you're keeping your day job, you can
Yeah,
take that kind of a risk. But if you're in a situation where you're taking that leap and you got to start making money as quickly as possible, you're probably better off
right.
buying something that's familiar.
Right, exactly. I mean, yeah, if you're not quitting your day job and you're just going to hobby machine, sure. I bought a little wood router that I had no idea anything about, and it took me, a couple weeks to figure out how to make it work and stuff before I originally left to start my own machine shop. I'd owned that router, 5 or 6 years prior. And, like you said, you do, if you're going to just keep your day job and you're just going to hobby around on it, then sure. But if you're going to go full out and support your family and, try and create jobs for future people, then maybe buy stuff that you're really familiar with and have a pretty good game plan. That's kind of what I did. And I just kind of wrote down like a little bulletin of, hey, this is what I need to do, and before I can go to this step, and like some of the stuff we've kind of talked about.
Yeah. So how about financing? It sounds like did you finance your equipment? Sounded like you financed your building. What did all this look like as far as convincing banks to loan you money, being in the early
Yeah,
stages of business?
that is a really really big challenge, is finding somebody to loan you the money. And banks usually won't even entertain new businesses. It doesn't even have to necessarily be a machine shop if you're not at least 2 years in business. And so luckily for me, and I don't know if it's luck or not, but I was able to use my house and do a home equity. And I had saved up, some money to go out and do my own thing and everything. And I was able to use a little out of my home equity to build my building and get my machines. And I'd already kind of started, the last 2 years before I went out, I started buying stuff that I knew I would need, like gauge pins, measuring equipment. Like I bought a really nice Minatoyo linear height gauge, stuff that you're going to need that you don't think about when you're working at another shop. You're like, oh, I'm just going to get this machine and I'm going to throw 5 or 6 end mills in it and a drill and a tap, and we're going to make these parts.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how you measure this, Yeah, sure, you can use mics or calipers or whatever, but, some of it, you want to check the center of a hole, or, you know, you have to be able to have that type of equipment in place ready to go. And I just kind of slowly, 2 years before I was going to start my own shop, started just buying this stuff piece by piece. And so it wasn't such a big burden when I did go out. I was able to just get the building and get the machines. And like I had money saved up for computers and cam software, and I'd already bought a bunch of measuring equipment. And I've acquired a fair amount. Doing machining for 15 or 20 years, you acquire all this stuff to, hone in on your craft and make sure you can measure your parts.
Yeah. And once again, that's just another example of if you're patient and you're diligent, you can find really good deals on the used market on inspection equipment.
Like, yeah, like my linear height gauge that I bought, it's an older Minatoyo one, and it came with the granite and the stand. The granite and stand alone are like $1,500, and I was able to find everything for about $3,000 is what I paid for it. So if you're patient and you're going to start a machine shop, you can go out and start looking for these deals on eBay or Facebook Marketplace and start just piecing your shop together so that when the day comes that you're like, I'm going full force, you're ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned cam software. What cam software are you currently using in your shop?
So I use Mastercam, and that's all I've ever used. My little wood router has another one. It's called Vectric. I guess you can program mills and stuff off of it, but it's not that great a software. But Mastercam is the best software, in my opinion, to use. I've never really dabbed into AutoCam or whatever it's called. Can't remember the name of it.
Fusion.
Fusion.
Yeah, that's the one
Yeah,
everybody loves.
I've seen a lot of people kind of use it, and I guess it works great. But I couldn't say it's good or bad. I've only used Mastercam and gotten fairly decent with it, and just kept going with that. It is expensive, and like I say, it's one of the most expensive ones on the market, but it is probably one of the best on the market.
Well, but like we spoke earlier, it's another example of being able to hit the ground running. You're not bogged
Right.
down with trying to learn a new cam software just because it's cheaper. Right. So there's
Right.
value in that, just to be able to start making money as quickly as possible.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of how I visioned it. I was just like, I'm just going to basically just take what I've learned at another shop and try and duplicate it, I can just hit the ground running.
So you mentioned previously that when you were starting your shop, you were kind of going through this internal decision-making process of trying to figure out what kind of shop you wanted to be.
Right.
What decision did you finally make, and what led to that decision?
It was just trying to find work. So like before I went out to start my own shop, I obviously started looking for work, a few months before. Once I had the machines in place and ready to go, I was able to start looking for work. And the work that I found was a little bit of production work. And I kind of just fell into the slot of being a job shop. And that's what we kind of did at my previous job. So I was familiar, be able to hit the ground running again and do some production, do some prototype. So I kind of fell into that slot, machining again.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
Is there a type of work that you think you specialize in, or are you kind of just all across the board?
Just kind of all across the board, really, whatever we can get our hands on and do for people. And, we built a pretty good clientele base. And, you're able to, in the early stages, you're kind of taking on anything that you can do. And once you start building that clientele, you kind of figure out, hey, I like doing this type of work. And, kind of put some people, you don't maybe reach out to them, and kind of put them off as, your back burner places if you need a little work, fill some spindle time. But, if you can build a good reputation with a few people, I mean, word of mouth is huge. I've had a few customers that I have now reach out to me, just through word of mouth, like, hey, this guy had this made from you guys, and we would like you to quote this job for us. And then we usually end up winning the bid and doing something for them, and then they become a customer, and then they tell whoever, so it's kind of like a word of mouth type of thing. And you're able to, build your shop based on work that you are willing to do or want to do. And a lot of people just do anything that comes at them, I guess.
So word of mouth has really worked out good for you.
Oh yeah. And knowing some people, like I have some family members that they're not necessarily machinists, but they work in like a place that would need machining. So that's helped me out too. And, being able to just get on the phone and call anybody you think you know that would know somebody. And
do you still think you're in a place where you have to spend a lot of time drumming up work, or have you built a good enough reputation that a majority of it just kind of comes in naturally?
It normally just comes in pretty natural. I don't really look a lot for work, and maybe every couple of weeks I'll get somebody new, and they'll see, hey, I seen you on Instagram, or we found you on a Google search, or somebody said who would be able to help us solve this problem. Could you machine this part for us? Word of mouth again. And I haven't really looked for work, which is like, I guess, kind of bad on my part, because I feel like I should be taking some time and looking for more work and seeing if that opportunity is out there for a big contract job that you can just buy a machine and feed it, for 20 hours a day or whatever. And I would eventually like to do that, but at the same time, you also have to get your customers' work done, and there's only so many hours in the day.
Well, I think for you, a big credit to things working out for you is your marketing. And we'll cover that a little bit more further on, but your marketing and your branding is some of the best as far as, I follow a lot of small niche machine shops like yours, and you just do amazing work, man. Just the way you display your parts. So we'll dive into that a little bit deeper down the road. So where do you see Dynamic Machine going in the future? Like, do you want to try to grow into a large job shop, or do you kind of want to stay smaller, more boutique, high-end operation?
Yeah, I would definitely like to grow into more of a production job shop if I could. And I would really like to get like some horizontal mills. I've seen, how those pan out, and it works great for a production job shop. And I know a few other shops around here that are able to do that type of work. And, I feel like there's pretty good work and money in that. And I would like to continue to grow my shop. And like I said, I'm pretty much full here. I'm tapped out on power. So in the future, we probably will move to another building or build another building if I can, and try and put a couple more machines in there and maybe hire a couple more people to help us keep pushing forward. And I would essentially like to grow into a spot, where we have 5 or 6 good employees that we are able to, and just kind of make a little bit of money, and everybody kind of just go home with a smile on their face, kind of keep it like a family based job, and kind of just keep it medium sized, I guess. Not like a small machine shop, but a medium sized machine shop, something that, one guy could basically manage, and you have a couple people helping you do the work, and like just do it slow but steady, and try and take as many precautionary steps that you can.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal. Also, I really believe in the future of machining is in the hands of smaller shops. I've been to a lot of large corporate machine shops, and they just get so bogged down with bureaucracy and too much management. And so keeping it small and tight and lightweight just gives you the ability to punch above your weight class.
Yeah, and that's how I feel too. I feel like if you get too big, it's like you have to have a team of people to manage it now. And if you could just have the, like the owner of the place, kind of manage the place and keep stuff flowing, and then maybe you had like one guy underneath you that could oversee the whole operation and make sure, tooling's coming, materials coming, stuff like that, that you can grow to a spot where you're always filling your spindles, and you're not like trying to manage 30 people at the same time, You can keep a dude busy and keep them working, and maybe give them some overtime, which everybody likes, and just kind of build a reputation of, hey, we can get this done in a decent amount of time for you guys. Or even if you can just get production work where you don't need a lot of people to run it, and you can get fully automated and with robots or stuff like that. I mean, machining and just manufacturing is just growing so fast that, I don't feel like you need a lot of people if you have the right amount of work. If you're doing a lot of production stuff where you can set up a robot to run 300 or 500 pieces, and it takes one dude to manage that machine for a few hours, and then he's on to the next one. Maybe he's setting up a R&D job for somebody that needs something done, or, it just, that's kind of where I would like to get it.
Yeah, even
kind of with automation.
Even automating programming, with some of this AI programming coming online, is you see a lot of people freaking out that they're going to lose their jobs. And there probably is a case where, somebody working in some big corporate machine shop that just sits around all day and programs, some of those people might lose their jobs. But it does empower small shops like you, because now you can get more output and free up time. by automating that process a little bit.
Right. And I mean, if you ended up getting a job where you could get a robot, I mean, you buy that robot one time, yeah, it might be $100,000+ for that thing, but that's 1 year salary, and that thing can just sit and run.
Yeah. So what's one of the biggest challenges you think you're going to have achieving that goal of growing to that size?
Probably being able to line up the people to help do that. I feel like the last, I don't know, 10 years, or I mean, maybe even farther back, everybody's been told, hey, you need to get a desk job. You need to sit behind a computer, go be a lawyer, or go work at Amazon or whatever, and I feel like now it's starting to pick back up where people kind of want to get back into the trade, and that's probably the biggest hurdle that is going to be is finding the right people to help you grow your brand and your businesses. And I think, it should be coming back around, and hopefully it is, because I mean, machining is a great trade to be in. A lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of money in it. If you prove yourself and you take notes and you absorb all the knowledge from your peers, you can do anything you want. And if that is you're going to grow, and you're going to help somebody grow their shop, and you're going to have a lifetime job, doing that. So that's going to be a big challenge is getting the people to help you do that.
I think culture and a good environment like you have, I think if you stay on that trajectory, it's going to make that process even easier. So I'm glad to see people like you have prioritized things like that. You've made it a nice place to be.
Yeah, like keep a family-oriented type work environment. Like everybody knows everybody. You're not just a number on the wall. And, hopefully everyone gets along well, and you can just make parts.
So, are there any other struggles that you'd like to mention that you've faced up to this point?
Just having the knowledge of being able to think outside of the box helps out a lot. Some of the struggles that you have is you'll get some parts come through and you just don't know how you're going to make it, or, and you kind of have to think outside of the box and figure out a good way to do it. And that's kind of been a struggle for me, because when I started this, I didn't really have anyone to lean on or ask, and say, hey, what do you think about machining it like this? I'm in here by myself, so you're kind of like, reach back into the files and go, I've done this before, or I've done something similar like this, so this should work, and you give it a try. And that's always a challenge, not being able to lean on your peers, I guess. And then, another challenge is you will hit those dead spots of, hey, we need some work here, and building the clientele up. It takes a little while to do, and you have to kind of prove yourself. That's always a challenge, I guess, to other vendors or people that need work done. And just finding that person that really likes your work and keeps sending you work is always a challenge. So
yeah. How about your quoting process? Did you have any lessons there that you had to learn the hard way, or have you always done fairly well?
Yeah, knowing that is a pretty big challenge. And I mean, you struggle with it, pretty much all the time. You're always like, do I charge this much, or do I charge this much? And sometimes you go, well, I'm going to charge a little less just to make sure I get this job. And 5 minutes later, they've sent you a PO, and you're like, dang it, I could have made a little bit more money,
Yeah.
And then there's always the challenge of, if you make bad parts, you got to replace that material, and that comes out of, your profits. So you got to, kind of think about it before you do stuff and say, hey, is this material something I'm willing to take on and try to cut and tool up, and make sure you get your tooling bill figured out for the job, and make sure you get the correct material pricing, and just everything that could go wrong during your quoting process out on the floor. You kind of want to kill that at the quoting table.
Exactly. Or at least leave some buffer in your quote
Right.
to accommodate for things, because everybody likes to think, oh, this is just going to go perfect 100%.
Right.
I'm not going to run into any issues. I'm not going to have a machine that breaks down midway through this job. Yet it always happens, right? So learning that skill and being able to build that in while still being able to get the work, because that's the risk you run. If you quote it too high, they're going to go to somebody else.
Right. Yeah. And like, I mean, you're talking, you buy some of these, end mills and stuff are $200 and $300 for one. And it's like, if that blows up, or you crash or something, that's $300, boom, just gone. You got to put a new one in, So I like to kind of figure out, I kind of have a pretty good understanding now, like what it's going to take for tooling, what's going to take for run time, stuff like that, that I'll put it all out on a spreadsheet and say, I'm going to be, $300 or whatever it is for some tooling. And then, the material, I try and figure out what each piece of material will cost. And then I always give myself an allowance, of like 5 extra pieces, or, for setup or for scrap. You're going to have a problem. A tap's just going to randomly break. It's going to catch a chip wrong and boom, that part's bad. You got to replace the tap and replace the material. And hopefully you have some way to catch it too. That's another mistake that is made, is if you don't have tool checks on your stuff, if that tap breaks and it just keeps going, the next tool that's coming or a drill breaks, it's going to break a couple tools. So you got to leave a little bit of a buffer in there, I feel. And I just kind of have a spreadsheet that I kind of check off all these boxes. And once I feel good with the number, I go, well, I could take maybe a little bit more off of my setup fee, or maybe it's not going to take 20 minutes. Maybe it's going to take 16 minutes, and I try and fidget the numbers to where I feel comfortable. And I always try to just give an honest price. I'm not trying to make them pay for everything in the job, because, if you're cutting aluminum, a 1/2-inch end mill is going to last for 2 or 3 jobs. And maybe you can make them pay for half of it, and you'll pay for half, because the next job you'll make that money back on that cutter if you don't have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm. So how about your tooling? Have you found yourself at a point where you're spending a little bit more on tooling to get more tool life and better cycle time? Or are you still kind of in the more budget friendly category on your tooling?
Yeah. The Haas stuff, I've bought off their website a few things, and I kind of am a little bougie on some of the roughing stuff. I like to get like helical stuff or Kennametal, really good stuff, because I feel like you just get better tool life. And especially on like steels or stainless steels, I'll spend the extra money on nicer tooling because it lasts longer. And usually if it breaks, if you have cheaper tooling, if it breaks, it usually kind of grenades, and it has a chance of taking out an ER collet. If you had an ER 32, it could bugger it up. And then now you got to buy a $50 collet on top of buying another tool, and I just kind of feel like if you buy nicer roughing tooling and some nicer finishing stuff, and you can kind of, get some cheaper tooling on like some of your smaller end mills, like 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch or something like that, or, some turning inserts, or, you just kind of got to play the game. You're also trying to make money. You're trying to pay bills. You got payroll coming up. You try to play the game. You kind of got to figure out what works for you. And if you like a certain end mill, continue to buy that one, because it works, and it's got longer tool life than maybe this cheaper tool, So I kind of play that game a little bit, and we try and buy nicer stuff for harder tool or for harder material. And, maybe the aluminum stuff, you're okay to get some cheaper stuff.
Those are all great points. So how many employees do you have?
I just have one currently right now, and he is basically, I was looking for somebody that was basically a turnkey guy, like somebody like me. I could just give him a version of Mastercam and kind of turn him loose. And I found him, and we kind of built like a pretty good friendship over the last few years. I've known him, probably about 10 years, and he came and worked for me, and he's been just kind of a turnkey guy, and it's been able to put a lot more parts out the door, with both of us being able to program and set up these machines. And that's another thing too, is once you start growing, you also are wearing all these hats when you start your shop. And it gets to a point where you have so much work. It goes from, how am I going to find work, to, holy cow, how am I going to get all this work done, to, I need some more machines or equipment to do this faster, to, I need an employee. It kind of happens really fast. And if you're patient about it, it happens in the right ways. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just kind of all works out.
Making the decision to hire your first employee, was that a daunting decision to make?
Yes and no. It was like trying to find somebody to help me do the work that was capable of doing it was kind of like an uneasy feeling, right? Like, I didn't know exactly who I was going to be able to hire to help me do the work. And, that was kind of terrifying to me, because I'm letting somebody that I don't personally know get on my equipment and run it, and they could crash it and, blow up a spindle, and there's $10,000. So that was probably the most uneasy feeling about thinking about hiring somebody, is letting them come in and, you're a fairly new shop, but you also need help, and they have to know what they're doing to be able to help you out. And if they come in and start crashing stuff or breaking tooling, that adds up really fast. So I was very fortunate in getting the person that I did, and we've not had very many issues and been able to just keep going. So kind of, you got to really put in the time of finding somebody, is kind of what I'm saying, I guess.
Yeah, I could see that being a challenge for me personally.
It's like go on a road trip,
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like a similar thing,
You figure out if you like that person real quick.
Yeah. If they're costing you a bunch of money and blowing up tooling, probably not going to work out.
Yeah. So what's your philosophy on leadership and creating a positive culture in your shop?
I think communication is big. I mean, I think if you have like a, kind of a work relationship with your peers, I think that helps out a lot. Be able to, ask them and lean on them, and they can lean on you, and they're not afraid to ask you stuff, like a lot of people I've noticed, they see the boss coming and they, get all antsy or whatever, and I kind of try and keep communication open and, try and lean on each other for challenges that come out throughout the shop. And you kind of have to, in the early stages of starting a machine shop, you have to kind of be able to lean on somebody. And that's been great with hiring the person that I hired, is he's able to answer questions and I'm able to answer questions for him. And when we got this lathe, we kind of bounced ideas off of each other and was able to learn it. And we just work well together, and we try and just keep it level headed and work as efficient as we can. And that's about it. I just try and work well together, I guess.
I know I've already touted it a couple times, but your setup in your shop, your environment that you've created there, I could see myself working at a shop like that. It's just really cool what you've done there.
Just try and stay laid back, like family oriented, like try not to work super hard, but still try to get stuff done, like just kind of have fun. And that's, the ultimate goal is, you got to work with this person for, 8 to 12 hours a day sometimes. And it's no fun being miserable in the job environment and on the job. And, I just try and kind of create a laid back environment, not too laid back that it's like you can kind of do whatever you want, but it's laid back enough that we have fun.
Yes. So I've already hinted about your branding. I just think it's absolutely on point. So give us a little background on on your history with branding and what lessons you've learned that you've implemented in branding Dynamic Machine.
Yeah. So I kind of, when I worked at the other shop, I kind of did it a little bit on my personal page, kind of messed around with it here and there. And a lot of people would comment or, shoot me a DM saying, "Hey man, this is a really cool video." And I had a buddy that went to school for marketing, stuff like that. And he kind of showed me a few pointers and he helped me create a couple videos here and there in the beginning stages and just, kind of figuring it out. And, you kind of see other people doing stuff in a video or something, how they're branding their business. And you're like, hey, this is kind of cool, but I would do, change it a little bit this way or add music, this type of music or whatever you want to do. And just kind of get creative, there's no real guideline that I follow or anything. I just try and be creative and kind of pay attention to what other people are doing or, come up with an idea. It might not work and, it might be dumb, but then the next one that you come up with might be pretty cool and people will like it. It's just kind of a trial and error type of thing.
So what are you using to create a lot of are you just doing it right in the app or are you doing it on some kind of external?
The apps anymore that you can use like Instagram, you can basically create any video that you want. You can add music, visual effects, you can piece it together, you can speed it up, slow it down. I mean, it's pretty insane what those apps will do. And I've only really used Instagram. I've got on YouTube a little bit and I would like to do a TikTok eventually and stuff, but it just you're kind of like going back into, following like AI, I guess, like you were saying, for programming or you kind of got to follow along with how the trend is going, with social media. It's a trend with anyone that's doing anything, you could be racing motorcycles or you could be a person that does vacation videos or whatever, it's just kind of, I think that's kind of the culture we're living in and you just kind of got to adapt to that. And
it's kind of a creative outlet for me.
Right. It's fun. Like, I don't necessarily do it to like, hey, check me out, or whatever. I mean, yes and no, but it's just fun. It's fun to throw a video together and, see if people like it or if, it kind of showcases the work you can do. And I really like using it because it showcases like our machines and it shows our shop off a little bit. And it shows the diversity of parts we're doing. We're cutting copper one day, we're cutting brass the next, we're doing some aluminum over here, some stainless here, some regular old steel, some plastic. I mean, you can sit and show off all the stuff you're able to do. And I feel like a lot of people see that stuff and are like, hey, this guy could build this part for us because here he is cutting copper,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Your videos are, I always get sucked into your videos. How do you create the little animations that you have at the end of some of your videos?
You can have a like graphics designer do it. There's tons online that you can send them your logo and, for $20 or something, they'll animate it for you. And you can say, hey, like one of mine is a mad scientist machinist, cooped up in his lair. And I was like, hey, it would be cool if this guy like had some like bubbles behind him or some like coolant flowing around him or something, or some electricity, and just give them some ideas and they're able to make this logo. And then they will email you back a little short video. And I always just add it in as an extra clip at the end of the video or the beginning, and like I have a little eagle and the flag will wave, like the American flag will wave. It's kind of cool. And it's cool to see that type of stuff getting done, and just a thought in your head just come to life, I guess. And I guess that's what machinists and machining is too. You take a raw stock of aluminum or whatever and pull a part out of it and you're like, damn, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, your mad scientist character is one that really stands out to me. I actually really like that dude.
Yeah.
So
there's little Easter eggs on him too, like where it would normally say like VF2, it says DME and just some hidden treasures, I guess, if you pay attention.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Next time I see it, I'll have to take a look.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So yeah, just evolving with that stuff that's mainly marketing. And like you say, when you praise me on my marketing and stuff, it's like, hey, I just tried it. I just was like, this is kind of cool. I've seen another shop do something similar to this. I'm going to do this now, and I get a lot of people saying, hey, this is cool. This is the type of energy we need to be bringing out of machine shops. Pretty cool.
It's true. And, it's like you said, I think there's probably a lot of shops out there that are considering doing similar things, and they're nervous and they think they're not going to be good enough in the beginning. But the truth is just get out there and start doing it. Start putting stuff together, start playing with it. Nobody's going to make fun of you. If anything, it just won't get very many views. Right. That's worst case scenario.
Yeah. It's the same feeling as if you were to go start your own machine shop. You're really uncertain. You don't know if it's going to work, but you're like, I'm going to try it, and you got to have the confidence to try it. And, if people make fun of you or they talk bad about you, just let those people slide and try again tomorrow,
Exactly. Keyboard warriors.
I had one dude say, anybody's a hero in aluminum. And I was like, some of the hardest parts I've ever made were out of aluminum, buddy.
Yeah. So I'm making some of the hardest parts I've ever made in my life right now. And they're out of aluminum, but they have like, one of them has 4,000 dimensions on it. It is an aerospace part. So.
Yeah. And then some people, like, some of your bigger places, they might not be able to share that information. They're, under contract where they can't share it. And there is a few instances that I can't share, the part, they're like, you can show like you machining it, but please don't show like, you can show like semi-finished or something, but they ask me not to show too much of it, and which is fine. That's another point maybe we should make, is always check with your customer. Hey, is it okay if I make a reel or a video on this and post this on my social media, just showcasing the work that I can do? So
yeah, that's a really good point.
I always check and make sure that they're okay with it. And some people, say, no, we'd prefer no, or go ahead, have fun.
That is extremely relevant. And especially if you're making stuff that has ITAR compliances.
Anything like that, military or medical or, aerospace. Some of those people they say no.
So on that, do you have any accreditations yourself?
I don't have any certifications. I wouldn't mind getting ISO 9000 certified someday, but it's pretty expensive to do. But
yeah,
if you don't do it, then I probably wouldn't. I think there's plenty of work out there that you don't really necessarily need it. And with how much money it costs to get going, sure, if you're a 10 or 15 year machine shop and you've got some money kicking around, or, you want to move on to that next level of machining, and that comes with all its other own challenges. I mean, you've got to now have, a quality department that is, all compliant. You have to have your machines up to date. You have to have all your software up to date. Some stuff requires background checks on not just you, but the employees, so it just kind of seems like something I don't really want to dabble into too much right now. I'm not opposed to doing it if I had to. If somebody came along and was going to give me a bunch of contract work and it was a guarantee slam dunk, sure. But as of right now, I think there's plenty of work out there if you just kind of put your legwork in, like we talked about earlier. You can find work, and it takes a little bit of time and some patience, but reach out to people, look on Google, just anyone I mean, you could call one of the tool salesmen that you knew at one of your previous jobs, and they could say, well, I don't know anybody, but you could call this place. They might have overflow work or something, and you could get a little work from them. And they might be ISO 9000 certified, and they'll put you under a subcontractor category, and you can work under them.
I guess you kind of hinted at this. My next question was going to be if you have any of your own products or innovations that you're working on.
I have ideas, things I would like to do, but those things also take money to get up and going, and want to see where I can get to without trying to also grow a product as well, like try and put all my energy and focus into the machine shop for, 5 or 10 years and try and get it to a stable place where it can run. And then maybe I'll dabble into doing something else, and start machining products of our own. I wouldn't mind doing like some fly fishing reels or stuff like that. I mean, try and do stuff that I'm passionate about. I like to fly fish, snowmobile and motorcycle, UTV. Maybe we'll make some stuff for like dirt bikes or something. But as of right now, the job shop stuff works out great for me, and doing a little production here and there is always the bread and butter slam dunk. So we're just going to keep going that direction and try and see what the future brings, I guess. And
that's cool.
Be patient.
Yeah, I've actually had the privilege of getting to spend a considerable amount of time at Ross Reels over in Colorado, if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I've watched their videos on how they machine their stuff, and I'm like, man, that'd be fun to make. A few years ago, I mean, it's probably been 5 years or so ago, I watched it on YouTube, and they would spin the OD on a lathe and take it over to a mill and cut one side and take it to another mill and cut the other side, and then somebody was deburring it.
So do you have any additional advice for listeners thinking about starting their own shop?
Be willing to put in the hours and put in the legwork and make sure that you just have all your ducks in a row, maybe try and find a couple jobs or, potential work before going out on your own. And if you are considering doing it, the way it worked out for me, I just kind of went out and did it full time. I didn't do it after hours of work, and I feel like that kind of helped me be on the fast track to doing it, and just was in the shop doing it and trying to just grow the brand. And if you can afford to get 5-axis equipment, if you know how to run 5-axis equipment, that helps you be able to get more out the door faster, because you're able to do more in one operation versus 3 or 4, and it eliminates the room for error.
Well, thanks for sharing your journey with us today. Go ahead and give out your contact information, Cody.
Yeah, you can reach me on social media at Dynamic Machine, or it's at DMECNC. We also have a web page, dynamicmachineandengineering.com. You can pretty much find all our contact information there.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank you for joining us today on the Machine Tool Maniacs podcast. Until next time.